William Norton's Introduction, continuing in Part 4. Dr. Westcott admits that evidence very much like this exists also with respect to the Peshitta-Syriac books. He says, the Peshitta version is assigned almost universally to the most remote Christian antiquity. The Syriac Christians of Malabar even now claim for it the right to be considered as an Eastern original of the extent of the New Testament, and their tradition is not, to a certain extent, destitute of all plausibility. It was in the Aramaean vernacular language of the Jews of Palestine that the Gospel of Matthew was originally written, if we believe the unanimous testimony of the Fathers, and it is not unnatural to look to the Peshitta as likely to contain some traces of its first form. The dialect of the Peshitta, even as it stands now, represents, in part at least, that form of Aramaic which was current in Palestine. Edessa is signalized in early church history by many remarkable facts. It was called the Holy and the Blessed City. Its inhabitants were said to have been brought over by Thaddeus in a marvelous manner to the Christian faith, and from that time forth, Eusebius adds, the whole people of Edessa have continued to be devoted to the name of Christ. Tradition fixes on Edessa as the place whence the Peshitta took its rise. Gregory Bar Hebreus, one of the most learned and accurate of Syrian writers, assumes the apostolic origin of the New Testament Peshitta as certain. He speaks of this as a known and acknowledged fact. Dr. Westcott says also, this version was universally received by the different sects into which the Syrian church was divided after the 4th century, and so has continued current even to the present time. All the Syrian Christians, whether belonging to the Nestorian, Jacobite, or Roman communion, conspire to hold the Peshitta authoritative and to use it in their public services. The Peshitta became in the East the fixed and unalterable rule of Scripture. The respect in which the Peshitta was held was further shown by the fact that it was taken as the basis of other versions in the East. An Arabic and a Persian version were made from it. Dr. Westcott has linked the Peshitta with the Latin Vulgate in a passage which, if freed from reference to the Latin version to avoid any discussion respecting it, says of the Peshitta, its voice is one to which we cannot refuse to listen. It gives the testimony of churches and not of individuals. It is sanctioned by public use, and not only supported by private criticism. Combined with the original Greek and the Old Latin, it represents the New Testament scriptures as they were read throughout the whole of Christendom towards the close of the 2nd century. It furnishes a proof of the authority of the books which it contains, widespread, continuous, reaching to the utmost verge of our historic records. Its real weight is even greater than this, for when history first speaks of it, it speaks as of that which was recognized as a heritage from an earlier period, which cannot have been long after the days of the apostles. Dr. Westcott gives, at page 241, the following information from Dr. Wright, professor of Arabic in Cambridge University, one of the best informed persons on this subject. He says, of the Syriac manuscripts in the British Museum, the earliest of the NT, which is dated 768 AD, it does not contain the 5 books last written. An earlier copy of the 5th or 6th century gives the same books in a different order. The earliest manuscript in which the disputed epistles occur is dated 823 AD. Dr. Westcott gives, under the letter D in his appendix, the chief catalogues of the books of the Bible during the first 8 centuries. 16 out of 32 of them are those of the Eastern churches. Number 4, by Chrysostom, 4th century, has only 3 Catholic epistles, James, 1 Peter, and 1 John. He omits the 5 books absent from the Peshitta. Number 7 is a list by Hebejesu, about 1318 AD, from Asaman's Bibliotheca, Volume 3. Hebejesu omits the 5 books above mentioned. He says, Matthew wrote in Hebrew in Palestine. He describes the 3 epistles, that of James, 1 Peter, and 1 John, as the 3 letters which have written in them, writing by the apostles in every copy and language, namely those of James, Peter, and John, and which are called Catholic. The statement that these 3 authenticated in all of them by the handwriting of the apostles is of special importance. In number 18, the list of Leontius, about 590 AD, 7 letters are called Catholic, i.e. universal, namely that of James, 1st and 2nd of Peter, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of John, and that of Jude. And the reason given for this name is because they were not written for one nation, as those of Paul were, but universally for all nations. He means probably for the Hebrew Christians dispersed throughout all nations. The above lists all represent the Eastern churches. And I will continue from here next time.